Sorry.
Recording in progress.
Okay, so last week we read the rest of the narrative concerning Absalom and his revolt against his father David, and it all came about because David did not discipline or punish the. We're going to be in 2 Samuel 18, I believe. Or 19. It's one of those back there. We'll get there. But Absalom was very angry with his father and revolted against him, and it all stemmed from David not doing or not punishing or disciplining his other son Amnon for the rape of Adar, Tamar. So Absalom revolted, and of course, last week we hear the whole narrative, that part that we do read. We skip over all the little bitty parts, get to that one. Absalom running from several soldiers on his mule, gets his long hair, caught in some brambles, and is basically hung there by his hair. And Joab takes it upon himself to defy King David's order and kills Absalom. And so we see the repercussions of that today. Joab, they were the soldiers were given specific orders that he was not to be harmed. So Joab just absolutely defied those orders. So we find the repercussions of all that today. Let's share our screen here. Share presentation. Technology's one. Okay. So 2 Samuel 18, and we're going to be in verse 19. So chapter 18, verse 19. We got all these fun names. So and then Ahimaaz, son of Zadok. Now Zadok's one of the priests, said, "Let me run and carry tidings to the king that the Lord has delivered him from the power of his enemies." Joab said to him, "You're not to carry tidings today. You may carry tidings another day, but today you shall not do so, because the king's son is dead." And who killed him? The guy saying it, Then Joab said to a Cushite. Now, remember, every time you hear the word Cush, it means Ethiopian or from that, basically dark skin. So, go tell the king what you have seen. The Cushite bowed before Joab and ran. Then Ahimaaz, son of Zadok, said again to Joab, "Come what may, let me also run after the Cushite." And Joab said, "Why will you run, my son, seeing that you have no reward for the tidings?" "Come what may," he said, "I will run." So he said to him, "Run." Man, if you want to run, go ahead. Okay. You don't have to tell me twice. I don't want to run. Okay, you don't have to. Then Ahimaaz ran by the way of the plain and outran the Cushite. So, I tell you, personally, I don't like this verse, because this seems to imply that the priests or preachers or whatever are required to be in excellent physical shape and like to run. I don't like to run. I ran enough. I like to walk. But anyway. So Ahimaaz, being the son of Zadok the priest, is a Levite by blood, and performs that role. And he was probably out with the soldiers at battle, because they take their religious leaders with them into battle. So he wants to inform the king of the victory. Now that it's also there's this thought that we see the Cushite. The reason Joab picks the Cushite is we've already seen King David, what happens when he gets bad news. The messenger gets killed.
Is David in Jerusalem?
David is in Jerusalem. Remember, he wanted to go out, but he was told no. Everybody told him no, because they thought he would be a target. Well, he would be compromised. His mentality would be compromised, because they were going against his son. So the Cushite here may possibly die by delivering the news of David's son's death. And of course, Joab knows that. He's the one that ordered the death. So there's also another thought here that Ahimaaz may want to get there in order to provide some pastoral care. He knows that the king is going to be sad. So it's just a thought, it's just conjecture. It doesn't say that, but just thought I'd like to throw that in there. Verse 24. Now David was sitting between the two gates. Remember, he went to the gate, and what happens at the gate? The gate, when you sit at the gate, I know I asked the question, didn't give you a chance to answer. Whenever someone sits at the gate, it's usually for several reasons. Number one, it is a city leader that is looking. We've already seen where Absalom did it in order to judge people or to tell them, hey, there's no judge in the city. The king ain't seen anybody. That kind of thing. The poor and the needy would sit at the gate asking for alms. So David is here sitting at the city gate because he does not want, or he wants to be the first to know the news of what's going on in battle. So he can't go out to the battle, or didn't go out to the battle, but he has a vested interest in the results of that battle. And so he's sitting out in front of the city, waiting for this news. The sentinel went up to the roof of the gate by the wall, and when he looked up, he saw a man running alone. The sentinel shouted and told the king. The king said, if he is alone, there are tidings in his mouth. He kept coming and drew near. Then the sentinel saw another man running. And the sentinel called to the gatekeeper and said, see, another man running alone. The king said, he is also bringing tidings. The sentinel said, I think the running of the first one is like the running of Ahimaaz, son of Zadok. The king said, he is a good man and comes with good tidings. So how would you like, I mean, there are people out there that you run so much that people know the way you run. Yeah. It's like watching the Tour de France. You know when you see Lance Armstrong, he rides the bike like none of the others. You just know it's him. So despite all the others. So anyway, you know what I mean. So they know he runs and they know how he runs. And that makes me wonder if he had just kind of a funny little gait, maybe he waddled when he ran or something. I don't know. But David realizes that, well, if it's him, he's a good man. He comes with good tidings. So, and David is aware that Ahimaaz is charged with bringing the good news. That based on what we've read before, there's this implication. The reason he wants to run and tell the news to begin with is because that's what his charge was to come back and tell the king. And Joab tells him no. And they, back and forth, and he finally does it. Yes. He's also aware that if a second runner is here, that there's more than just good news. Okay, verse 28. Then Ahimaaz cried out to the king, all is well. He prostrated himself before the king with his face to the ground and said, blessed be the Lord your God, who has delivered up the men who raised their hand against my lord the king. The king said, is it well with the young man Absalom? Ahimaaz answered, when Joab sent your servant, I saw a great tumult, but I do not know what it was. The king said, turn aside and stand here. So he turned aside and stood still. He
actually knows.
Yes. The only thing on David's mind is the safety of his son here. I would say that we've talked about this before, that, we hear these commands, thou shalt not steal or cheat, or and of course we add lie in there, bearing false witness. That those orders are, it's the intent behind the law. This is, I think, an example of righteous lying. He's trying to protect David's heart because the news is coming. He knows the other runner behind him. So he's trying to prepare David's by. So anyway.
Well, also, if he didn't witness it, he doesn't know. It's just hearsay.
He knows Absalom's dead. Yeah. He knows. Very well. Did I go back? 31. 31. I went the wrong way. When the Cushite came And the Cushite said, good tidings for my lord the king, for the Lord has vindicated you this day, delivering you from the power of all who rose up against you. Man, I'd like to listen to this verse on tape, hear James Earl Jones read that. So fine. The Lord has vindicated you this day. The king said to the Cushite, is it well with the young man Absalom? The Cushite answered, may the enemies of my lord the king and all who rise up to do you harm be like that young man. Well, he brings good news, but it's bittersweet good news.
Well, what does that mean? That's not an answer.
Well, basically, he's telling him that may all your enemies end up the way your son is. He's telling David he's dead. The king was deeply moved and went up to the chamber over the gate and wept. And as he went, he said, oh, my son Absalom, my son Absalom, would I had died instead of you, O Absalom, my son, my son. And so we get this idea, this mimicking, this aping of the heart God has, his son. We also get a kind of a good comparison in wordage and verbiage. Jesus looking out over Jerusalem and saying, oh, Jerusalem, Jerusalem, if I could be at him that gathered, so we get very similar words. It's a very touching moment. I had died instead of you. So David seems to indicate that maybe the kingdom would have been better had he died. And Absalom I don't think so. Maybe. So on to chapter 19. It was told Joab, the king is weeping and mourning for Absalom. So the victory that day was turned into mourning for all the troops. For the troops heard that day the king is grieving for his son. The troops stole into the city that day as soldiers steal in who are ashamed when they flee in battle. The king covered his face, and the king cried with a loud voice, oh, my son Absalom, oh, Absalom, my son, my son. Then Joab came into the house to the king and said, today you have covered with shame the faces of all your officers who have saved your life today, the lives of your sons and your daughters, and the lives of your wives and your concubines. So Joab hears David's response, and it makes him mad. It makes Joab mad. But really, I think it's, we're starting to see, we've seen Joab's character over the course of many years now. Joab really doesn't care about the king. He's out for one thing, and that's himself. And so he's trying to turn this around by claiming he's the victim, not David. David has just lost his son after giving an order not to kill him. And when he hears, if David ever hears how his son was died, it was a cowardly act. Absalom was in no position to fight back at all. So yeah, Joab is flipping the script here and telling David, how dare you? We risked our lives to protect you from this revolt. Yeah. We'll see how that goes. No, verse 6. The thing continues here. So my son. It was to do that for love of those who hate you and for hatred of those who love you. You have made it clear today that commanders and officers are nothing to you. For I perceive that if Absalom were alive and all of us were dead today, then you would be pleased. So go out at once and speak kindly to your servants, for I swear by the Lord, if you do not go out, not a man will stay with you this night. And this will be worse for you than any disaster that has come upon you from your youth until now. Then the king got up and took his seat in the gate. The troops were all told, see, the king is sitting in the gate. And all the troops came before the king. So we see another aspect of sitting in the gate. It serves as a marker that someone important is there, or a speech is about to be given, or something like that. So all the troops, when they see King David go to sit in the gate, they know to go there too. Joab is making commands of a king that he has no right to do and no power to do. But David does realize that his troops have come back and they're forlorn. They're very distraught. They come into town as if they're defeated, even though the revolt is over. So he realizes that if he doesn't boost the morale of the troops, they're going to desert him. So Joab is right, possibly, in that moment. Meanwhile, all the Israelites had fled to their homes. All the people were disputing throughout all the tribes of Israel, saying, the king delivered us from the hand of our enemies and saved us from the hand of the Philistines, and now he has fled out of the land because of Absalom. Remember, they all ran away when Absalom declared himself king? Yeah, this is them. But Absalom, whom we anointed over us, is dead in battle. Now, therefore, why do you say nothing about bringing the king back? So those who had sided with Absalom are now realizing the dilemma they're in. They're trying to figure out whether to go back to David or to do something else. Yeah. King David sent this message to the priests Zadok and Abiathar. Say to the elders of Judah, why should you be the last to bring the king back to his house? So I stopped there for just a moment. The way when a king was crowned, the coronation process, each tribe would come and present their words of loyalty to the king and all that. And so Judah should be the first one there. That's the king's own people, and they didn't. So that's why he's saying. The talk of all Israel had come to the king. You are my kin, you are my bone and my flesh. Why then should you be the last to bring back the king? And say to Amasa, are you not my bone and my flesh? So may God do to me and more if you are not the commander of my army from now on in place of Joab. So Joab has just lost his job. Joab is no longer the general. Amasa has been made general. Amasa swayed the hearts of all the people of Judah as one. They sent word to the king, return, both you and all your servants. So the king came back to the Jordan, and Judah came to Gilgal to meet the king and to bring him over to Jordan. Earlier, Carolyn, when you said, was he in Jerusalem? No, remember they had gone to Gilgal. They had fled from Absalom. So that's kind of where he said it. So I was wrong in that. So that's where David was. So now they've gotten word, yes, come back. You're going to be our king. We're going to recognize you as king. So you can come back home. But David here is questioning why his own tribe hasn't reaffirmed his kingship, and he rightfully blames Joab for all of this. He takes care of Joab. So, verse 16, Shimei, son of Gera, the Benjaminite from Bahurim. If y'all remember him, he was the one that sent all those supplies. He was one of the three that sent all those supplies to David, to David's troops. Hurried to come down with the people of Judah to meet King David. With him were 1,000 people from Benjamin. And being from Benjamin, those are Saul's people. And Ziba, remember him? He was the servant of the house of Saul who had taken over, he'd taken over for Mephibosheth, or he had served Mephibosheth. With his 15 sons and his 20 servants, rushed down to the Jordan ahead of the king, while the crossing was taking place to bring over the king's household and to his pleasure. So some of those who had followed Absalom have reverted back to following David, and then others that have served David from the outskirts are also they're trying. They want in on this too. There's an acknowledgement here. Shimei, son of Gera, fell down before the king as he was about to cross the Jordan, and said to the king, may my lord not hold me guilty, or remember how your servant did wrong on the day my lord the king left Jerusalem. May the king not bear it in mind. For your servant knows that I have sinned. Therefore, see, I have come this day, the first of all the house of Joseph, to come down to meet my lord the king. Abishai, son of Zeruiah, answered, shall not Shimei be put to death for this, because he cursed the Lord's anointed? But David said, what have I to do with you, sons of Zeruiah? Now, the sons of Zeruiah, that is Joab and Abishai, okay? So, that you should today become an adversary to me. Shall anyone be put to death in Israel this day? For do I not know that I am this day king over Israel? The king said to Shimei, you shall not die. And the king gave him his oath. Basically, David believes there's been enough bloodshed. He doesn't want any more killing. And he doesn't want any more blood on his hands. And it'd be nice to think that he realizes that this could have been averted if he had just taken care of the sin of Amnon from the very get-go. But, at this point, it is what it is. Shimei is going to come back into our narrative in a little while. Not today, but a few weeks. Verse 24, Mephibosheth, grandson of Saul, came down to meet the king. Now remember, when Absalom revolted, King David left. Mephibosheth says, I'm going to take the place of my grandfather. My grandfather's kingship is going to be restored. So, even after David had taken him into his own. Anyway, so Mephibosheth, grandson of Saul, came down to meet the king. He had not taken care of his feet, which were bad to begin with, or trimmed his beard, or washed his clothes from the day the king left until the day he came back in safety.
Wow.
Yeah. Sounds like some of them baseball pitchers not washing their socks during the playoffs or something. When he came from Jerusalem to meet the king said to him, "Why did you not go with me, Mephibosheth?" He answered, "My lord, O king, my servant deceived me. For your servant said to him, 'Saddle a donkey for me so that I may ride on it and go with the king, for your servant is lame.' He has slandered your servant to my lord the king, but my lord the king is like the angel of God. Do therefore what seems good to you. For all my father's house were doomed to death before my lord the king, but you set your servant among those who eat at your table. What further right have I then to appeal?" He realized he'd been deceived. He thought things were different. At least that's what he's claiming, and had been waiting to die. Hence the not washing his clothes or trimming his beard or taking care of his feet. Although, I don't know, I get to a point during the week that, if I had a shower in 12 hours, I realize I probably need a shower.
Longer than that.
But, yeah, it definitely. Right, and we don't know exactly how long it was, but we have to assume at least a few weeks to months, so.
Yeah.
So the king said to him, "Why speak any more of your affairs? I have decided, you and Ziba shall divide the land." Mephibosheth said to the king, "Let him take it all, since my lord the king has arrived home safe." So Mephibosheth is basically denying his birthright. He's giving it to Ziba. Essentially, he's telling David that he's 100% behind him with no further connections to his father. David has ruled that, you did take, you were opportunistic while Absalom was revolting against me. You took it upon yourself to try to usurp the throne too. And so, and I treated you well. So you're going to lose part of your inheritance, part of what is rightfully yours. We're going to give it to the servant of your grandfather, Saul, Ziba, who has become your servant. And, he's been more righteous in all this than you have. So anyway, and then Mephibosheth says, "You know what? Yeah, he deserves it all." So he just gives the birthright, all of Saul's lands to Ziba. I love when verses start now. Verse 31. Now Barzillai the Gileadite had come down from Rogelim. He went on with the king to the Jordan to escort him over the Jordan. Now this was another one of those three that gave its troops food. So, Barzillai was a very aged man, 80 years old. Did you hear that?
No.
Very, very aged. Yeah. Right. He had provided the king with food while he stayed at Mahanaim, and for he was a very wealthy man. The king said to Barzillai, "Come over with me and I will provide for you in Jerusalem at my side." Barzillai said to the king, "How many years have I still lived? I should go up with the king to Jerusalem. Today I am 80 years old." I don't believe that means that today's his birthday. I'm just, he's just remarking that, I've lived on this earth for 80 years. Can I discern what is pleasant and what is not? Can your servant taste what he eats, what he drinks? Can I still listen to the voice of singing men and singing women? I think the answer to all these is yes, but they're rhetorical questions. Why then should your servant be an added burden to my lord the king? Your servant will go a little way over to Jordan with the king. Why should the king recompense me with such a reward? So he's basically saying, I'm near death and I've lived a long life. let me stay. This is where I belong. But he does want to go a little way over to Jordan because that's an act of loyalty to the king. People will see that and know that he stands with the king too. Even though he doesn't go all the way, he goes enough. Okay, verse 37. Please let your servant return so that I may die in my own town near the graves of my father and my mother. But here is your servant, Chimham. How do you like that name, Chimham? Chimham. Y'all ever heard of Jeff Dunham? He's the guy with puppets, the ventriloquist, and all the puppets. One of his characters is named Peanut. It's a monkey looking character. And Peanut is a very he enunciates every letter in Jeff Dunham's name. And so Jeff Dunham. So anyway, I see that. Chimham. So let him go over with my lord the king and do for him whatever seems good to you. The king answered, Chimham shall go over with me, and I will do for him whatever seems good to you. And all that you desire, I will do for you. Then all the people crossed over the Jordan, and the king crossed over. The king kissed Barzillai and blessed him, and he returned to his own home. The king went on to Gilgal. Chimham went on with him, and all the people of Judah, and also half the people of Israel, brought the king on his way. Now, it's interesting that half the people of Israel, why would it say that? The other half's already there. The other half's already in Jerusalem. So this is a reenactment of David's coronation, the original official coronation. Verse 41, then all the people of Israel came to the king and said to him, why have our kindred, the people of Judah, stolen you away and brought the king and his household over the Jordan and all David's men with him? All the people of Judah answered the people of Israel, because the king is near of kin to us. Why then are you angry over this matter? Have we eaten at all the king's expense, or has he given us any gift? But the people of Israel answered the people of Judah, we have 10 shares in the king, and in David also we have more than you. Why then did you despise us? Were we not the first to speak of bringing back our king? But the words of the people of Judah were fiercer than the words of the people of Israel. Oh, sound familiar? Sounds like our political system today. We have more people than you, so we should be the ones to decide the outcome. That's why we are a constitutional republic. Because that's why we have two branches of Congress. One is senators, where each state gets the same number of votes in the Senate. But the voice of the people, as population, that's the House of Representatives. It's the same thing going on here. The House of Representatives, represented by Judah or by Israel, is saying, well, we got more people than you. We should be the ones to decide. And the Senate, Judah, is saying, no, we have an equal voice in this too. Yeah, so this, if it hasn't already become apparent, the kingdom is not united, even under David. And this continues on, it just gets worse and worse and worse and worse and worse. So next week, next time, I think next week, rebellion, revenge, and rejoice. Oh, are there any questions for today?
I'm not sure I understand what they're fighting or arguing over. They want to be.
Well, remember earlier in the text we read today, Judah, who are David's own people, weren't the first ones to acknowledge his kingship. They didn't do their job, what they were called. The people of Israel, the other 10 tribes, did. They acknowledged his kingship. So that's what the argument said is, you're reaping all the benefits of being of the same blood as David, but we're the ones who brought him back.
Powerful position. Is that what they're?
No, but it's kind of like James and John in the New Testament. Who's going to be greater in the kingdom? We're the ones that, Israel saying we acknowledge David after this rebellion, way before you did. You were still questioning whether, what to do, whether we go back with David or let's do our own thing. So, yeah, it's who's greater than king. Well, good to see you, Miss Carol.
Sorry.
Apologize. So, we're not ended yet. I got 7 minutes.
It's not a question, but a comment, the Joab thing, his comments about, you lost your son, but the soldiers all did what you told them to, and so they're gonna take it negatively that you're not happy with them.
Yeah.
Is, kind of black and white thinking, and how often do we do that? You know, it's either or, where there's a big gray area there that is not recognized.
Joab knew he screwed up. He had several people that told him, we shouldn't be doing this. He said, do it. So, right, he knows he screwed up. So well, I think it borders on psychopathy. He's a psychopath.
He's manipulating.
Right. Or sociopath, maybe sociopath. Right. He's trying to flip the script. He's trying to put the blame on the victim than he is on the person who's rightfully. So, well, any other questions? No, anybody want to join the choir today?
Okay.
You don't, yes, you can.
Joyful.
You speak, don't you? Okay, we're gonna end it, and for those online this evening, and if you want to join us by Zoom, check out our Facebook page.
No, check